Hey everyone, welcome to a Cybersecurity Tuesday here on Techstrong Gang. We've got a lot of cyber news to talk to you about today. What's going on at GitHub? What's happening with AI security? How are we going to get more security budget? Maybe by moving security ops, combining it with IT ops. That and more here live on Techstrong Gang. Okay, welcome back here to Techstrong Gang. Thanks for joining us today. As usual, we have a great gang of folks who are going to weigh in on the topics of the day here at, as I said earlier, a Cybersecurity Tuesday. Let me introduce you to who we have. First of all, as always, joining us from Colorado, Techstrong CTO and Principal Techstrong Research Analyst, Mitch Ashley. Mitch, welcome.
Good day. Security Tuesday is always a good day.
Yep. And joining Mitch is our editor for Techstrong AI, as well as Digital CXO and all-around coverage, Amanda Razzini. Amanda, welcome.
Hello.
And then we have a very special guest gang member today. It's the first time he's been on the gang, but it won't be the last, we hope. Coming to you live from his twains. He'll tell you about that. Chris Blask. Hey, Chris, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Nice to have you. And then last but not least, because I'm kicking it over to him, our Chief Content Officer here at Techstrong.
Hey, everybody.
Mike Vizard. Mike, what do we got for today?
All right, well, let's just jump in. And since, it's Chris's first time, we're just going to kick it right to him from the get-go. There's just a massive amount of noise on the cybersecurity front related to this GitHub issue where I guess the bad guys are cloning and forking different repositories, injecting malware, typo squatting, and doing all the things that bad guys do. But is this spinning out of control, Chris? What's your thought?
Well, in short, no, right? As Alan knows, I have this sort of inevitability curve is a term I have for a view of things, and things happen at a certain time for reasons. Right. And the article that Richie Jennings wrote on Security Boulevard about this on February 29th, and the fascinating the timing of this, the CISA, the DHS, I don't know if I need to spell out all the acronyms. Most of our viewers know who CISA is, had on the same day on February 29th an S-bomb-a-rama. And Aranish and Hatra and I have been co-chairing one of the working groups. So we're all presenting out and having conversations on that same day about these issues. So when you peer into the details of this, we have now some provenance and inventory information with software bill of materials that over the last 5 years has been enacted, developed, companies are using and moving around. In the space that Aranish and I and our working group have been focusing on is S-bomb sharing. And this forks all the way down, right? Turtles all the way down. We're at the stage now where we can say one-to-one, here's what's in my software. And we're doing that pretty good. Big companies are doing it. Governments are doing it. But in something like GitHub, where, to this point, there's lots of little pieces. How do we tie them all together? And we're at the same time on February 29th, last week, at the point of having serious conversations with serious components of how we actually do that. So I think this is just yet another example of the adversaries, attackers from a security perspective, taking advantage of something just slightly before the defenders have geared up the components to fix it. And they're forcing us to do it because we have to. 10 years ago, we didn't have to do this, but 10 years from now, we're going to be doing this.
So you're not saying that this is your fault because you had a meeting and now all this stuff is happening because of you guys.
Mere coincidence. Mere coincidence.
I'm like Forrest Gump. I'm in the back of a lot of weird pictures over the industry, but no, but it's just time. It's time for these issues. In the ICS world, in the OT world, right? In critical infrastructure, we all think about the Stuxnet attack and the hands and everything else. And the same sort of question from the press journalist at the time. It's like, this is just time. Is someone going to be using cyber means to attack critical infrastructures at some point? You have a geopolitical event, have some actors play that out. Someone's going to be using these vulnerabilities that have been latent, but too hard to use to date. But if you can start using them, you get an advantage. And it's always around the same time, the defenders and the people building the systems have been chewing on these things and start coming up with solutions. So it's just a forcing function to make us implement the real end-to-end supply chain and threat intelligence, visibility, all this intelligence sharing stuff over the next decade is going to weave together.
What I thought was
Chris,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
No, I was just going to say it seems like there's two sides of this coin, or the story is the part you're talking about is how we secure the repositories, and we know, what are valid repositories for project. But there's also sort of the human element. It's kind of like fishing for code, right? And it's like if you just get enough people to pick the wrong thing and you missed something, it's that 1% rule or one-time rule. But it seems like that whole, through the obscurity of so many things, this is up, now it's gone, and which one do I pick? It really brings into question, how would you know?
Well, it's easy to predict things. We all do that. Say, hey, I thought of that first, but it's all about timing. That's when it really matters. Are we in the window that matters? In the next 12, 36 months, or the next, 3, 5, 7 years, I'm going to have to deal with something. And if not, don't start. And if so, then look around and see if it's happening everywhere. And one of the supply chain use cases I love the best was working with the Scottish National Manufacturing Institute. Had a use case where you basically have an airframe manufacturer, Boeing, is working with them, public information, Boeing and Rolls-Royce. And you say that I'm a flight engineer in some Air Force somewhere, and I want to know what software was running on the radial plasma forge that made this one blade. And I want to know right now. We know how you can do that. And it's the same sort of systems and literally the same things that we're building in the SBOM world right now. So it's not just because of security, to the points later in the episode. It's when, it's better, faster, cheaper, right? If you don't get on the internet and get a firewall in 99, your competitors will, and they'll lower their costs and put you out of business. That's what drives security adoption.
So to me, though, specifically on this GitHub issue, here's something unique. The bad guys use the very model that's made GitHub successful to their advantage, which is the openness of GitHub. Anybody could open an account. Anybody could fork open source software. Anybody can put stuff up there. Anybody can pick a name that sounds a little similar to a name of a legitimate repo or a legitimate code component or what have you. And if you speak to GitHub, obviously they don't want this to happen, but they don't want to close off that openness either. Mitchell, I'm reminded when you and I went to go meet with U.S. Geological Survey. Remember back in the day with Still Secure? These people have, earthquake sensors all over the bottom of the ocean to the top of Mount Himalaya, right? And everything in between. And we said, hey, you got to secure these things. They said, oh no, we can't secure. We're scientists. These things have to be open because the world needs to be able to monitor seismic activity. But someone's going to use it for a bad intent. So be it, but we need to keep these things open, right? The problem I think we're going to have here with GitHub is, can they put in some automated check to verify the identity of the people putting this up, which goes kind of against their kind of principles anyway, and to verify that in fact it's not malware. It's a hard, thorny issue.
I would go another step. There are other places to put code repositories together. So maybe you don't put everything in GitHub because it's just too big a target. Maybe, and especially if it's critical IP to you, maybe you find somewhere else to put that. Mitch, I don't know what you think.
It all goes to don't trust anything and don't pull things directly from NPM or whatever, PyPy or GitHub directly. Is pull those down, validate that it's what you think it is, and then distribute it into your workflow, into your pipeline. So it goes right to that kind of zero trust approach where we just have to assume anything could have gotten compromised right now until there's a better way to know what's authentic and what's not.
Just another reason why we can't have nice things.
There you go. So Chris, to that point that Mitch is making about distrust and verify, why don't we distrust and verify more?
Well, time to transparency ends up being key, right? In the example I gave a second ago about the, turbine blades, that information's around. We can find that out. If there was a crash investigation, we'd all watch on over periods of months and quarters and years as that information is found and displayed. But it just takes too long to get. And to this issue, Alan, you're exactly right. There's very old standing issues that we've been able to get around. And I think the what's going on in supply chain security, my main interest in it is we're enunciating existing relationships so that we can say, not that everybody needs to get this information, but everyone appropriate needs to get this information. And what does that mean? Well, look at how we live our daily lives. Intellectual property control, in threat intelligence and supply chain intelligence, the same concerns come up. And you look at corporations or governments, and how are you controlling your intellectual property today? Mostly hope, right? You got some contracts and policies, and you hope your employees kind of know what they mean and don't say the wrong things. So it's not that we need to get it perfect, but we're at the point now, and this GitHub thing is a perfect example where we need the appropriate time to transparency. So all these questions could be answered by somebody actually doing something and not in some forensic investigation, because the information's there.
I just want to say one last thing before we close out on this, and that is, look, it's not to shoot arrows at GitHub. They didn't do anything particularly wrong. Yeah, we had a similar situation on a smaller scale on Docker Hub a couple of years ago, where people were putting up Docker, pre-configured Docker or pre-populated Docker containers, very similar names to legitimate containers, for like building block kind of code stuff. And people didn't know, and they don't look, and they don't see where the period is or the apostrophe or, it's a one letter off, especially if it's English as a second language, and boom, you download some malicious container into your infrastructure. So this is not just a GitHub thing. I think it goes to all repos.
I think if it's shared, it's suspicious, right? There you go.
Fair. Is that the bizarre doctrine?
There you go.
If it's shared, it's suspicious. Okay.
Is it caveat emptor, right?
Yep. Hey, you know what? Maybe we're going to come back and we're going to switch gears into AI security, if that's all right. We'll be back here in just a second.
All right, and we're back, and we're going to start talking about AI and security and the lack thereof. And I guess I'm going to jump this right over to Amanda, who hasn't had a chance to jump in just yet. But since you're covering Techstrong.ai for us, are we taking security seriously enough in the land of AI, or is this just another instance where we're playing catch up?
Well, I think as more and more AI is being utilized and large language models, there's just more that has to be addressed and more opportunity for threat actors to attack. So we have to be ever vigilant, which brings us to a recent story I posted about Hugging Face and some attacks that they've endured. There was some research done with JFrog that found there was 100 issues of malicious models in Hugging Face platform. So that's concerning because, in one way you think, well, they have over 300,000 large language models that they catalog. So 100, but 100 is when you think about the attacks that can come from executing malicious code just through those 100 attacks, it could be severe. So,
Chris, timing, huh?
Right. Yeah. So, I tend to look at the opportunities for, we're security folks. So we can look at a new tech like, what we call AI these days and how can you use that to cause problems. But in into the supply chain space that I've been spending all my time in, I look at this again, time to transparency, like I was saying earlier. If you can see the policies across a supply chain, for example, then you could make choices about what information you're sharing. And, to a point made earlier, is shared suspicious? Today, kind of, yes. Why are you doing it? Because I can't see. So I see AI as a huge part of this, again, 3, 5, 7 years out, when we get a little more maturity in understanding your policy position. So, whether it's the previous topic, with supply chain attacks and be able to see down in that, without that, it just takes too much time. So we don't implement it in our processes. We can't use it for security purposes. Will security get hacked and steal our kidneys? Yeah, probably that too.
That's scary.
It seems to what you were saying before too, about we haven't had to deal with it until now, right? I mean, this is sort of the moth to the flame story. AI, generative AI, poof, everybody needs to be doing it. Let's rush and go and figure out how we can leverage this and exploit it. Oh, good. Well, while they're doing that, all those things we haven't done yet, there's been some things, but maybe not all the things that we need to do. It's an opportunity right now, given how much prevalence people are adopting it and using it.
I think there's 3 things to this, and we're only focused on the one. The first one is the one we know and have always dealt with, which is we have software components that have malware injected into them, and then they wind up being used to build the AI model, and it's not much different than what we see with other software artifacts. The 2 aspects we're not thinking through enough is, A, the bad guys want to poison the data model itself by putting bad data into it so that it comes up with a hallucination. And then the third is, the model itself is probably among the most important intellectual property any company has, and the bad guys want to steal the entire model. So we haven't sat down to figure out how we're going to secure the model itself. So I don't know, Chris, if how much of that is the cybersecurity responsibility? How much of that is the responsibility of the MLOps people who are building the models? And are we just having the same DevSecOps conversation we had with MLSecOps? Is that what we're calling it?
Well, yeah, a couple slices on that, working backwards. Yes, it's the same argument we've always been having. And, and we're the responsible parties because nobody else is actually tasked with, worrying about cybersecurity. And, if your job is to run the network, then you'll get fired if you don't run the network. And if you spend too much, so we're in the hot seat on this one. And but I see multiple things coming together. Again, we're not just trying to convince people to get a firewall and close the door and so forth. We're 3, 4 iteration into this whole cybersecurity thing, right? We have CISOs that are actually CISOs these days. I was a little skeptical they ever would be, right? They were a fusible link for a decade or two there, right? It's just somebody the board could, throw under a bus. But we're getting to the points. And again, I think, each of these things has risk. There's no guaranteed positive outcome of all this. But I can't see us now, even with, I think AI, what we're calling AI right now, is still very, very immature. But the things you can do with it that just took too much bloody time before give us so much opportunity to clean up so many messes, attestations, right? So much of what we're talking about right now is because we don't really have any real reason to believe anything we see, and we mostly trust it because we kind of know where it's coming from. And maybe we, in some cases can put, cryptographic key exchange to really, have a pretty decent idea that it really is you saying it. But we're getting to the state where we have to be able to say very, very clearly, and we have the tools to do this. We just haven't had the time. So all this AI stuff, if it doesn't go Skynet on us, allows us to actually, as Pollyanna as this sounds, do a lot of the stuff we've all been complaining about for 30, and in some cases 40 and 50 years.
Yep.
Actually,
Alan, it seems like it's the Who, new boss, same as the old boss. We're talking about repositories and
Little Pete Townsend.
a little windmill going on.
Hey, well, Amanda, let me ask you something here. Do the people who build these AI models, the data scientists and the folks that you kind of engage with, do they think about cybersecurity? Can they spell cybersecurity? Because it seems like they're even worse off than developers used to be in terms of how much attention they're paying to this.
Yeah, I think there's so much going on. that they really need to slow down and try to collaborate a little bit more. There's a lot of work needed in breaking down the silos and communicating across departments with a lot more focus on cyber issues.
I think if we wait for them to slow down, we're going to be waiting a long time because they're not slowing down. We got to keep up. And that fundamentally is, I think, one of the lessons I've learned in 25 years plus of security, which is they ain't slowing down. You got to get on that moving train, right? And that's our job, is to keep that train moving, but we got to hop on. I will tell you, though, I'm reminded of an interview I did maybe 15, 17 years ago at the time. I had the CEO of MongoDB and the CEO of Couchbase DB, right? These are NoSQL databases. And I asked them a very similar, when you said that, it triggered my thought. I said, does NoSQL stand for no security? Because it doesn't seem like you guys have any security built into this stuff. And they both agreed, and they said, Alan, when our customers demand security, we'll give them security. Right now, they're not demanding security. They want to be able to just take in data in an unstructured, NoSQL manner. When AI consumers demand security, the AI providers will build in security. As Chris said at the beginning of the show, it's full circle. It's all about timing. It's all about, you can't make wine before it's time. When people demand security in AI, we'll have security in AI, not a moment before.
Mitch, what happens, though, when we've seen this with DevSecOps, right? Theoretically, we're shifting left, we're shifting right, we're all going to have a kumbaya moment here and fix all this stuff. It seems like what really happens is because nobody's in charge, nothing happens, right?
Well, it's not an issue till it's an issue, right? and then people will do something about it. Right now, we need to do it because we need to, not because we have to. So that's sort of that burning platform change management paradigm, right? Until your platform's on fire, you've got to jump. There's certainly a bit of that, and that ties to what Alan's saying about, when the customer or when the market, when money is on the line, that's when it makes a difference. I think the one thing I would say that kind of hope for optimism is hopefully we can take all of our DevSecOps learning of security working with software folks and figuring out the motion of how we break down silos and get more effective software security, working on software supply chain, et cetera. We take those same lessons and apply it to AI. It's a different technology, but it's the same problem. So there's many things I think that are applicable to that. So let's be smart and leverage what we've already learned.
Chris, are you sharing that hope, that optimism here? Where are you?
I am notoriously optimistic, and so far I've been right. I'm pushing 60 years old. I've lived through the end of the world all over, over and over again, right? And we keep solving problems by the time we need to. And this is one of these things. We look at everything we've said in all of our careers, however long we've been at this, is true, but is now the time. Alan mentioned these boats, right? I've been building boats on the water, solar powered, for the last 2 years. And I'll tell you, things get done when they need to get done, not before, right? And as we'll talk about in the next segment, the economics of things. Hacking is not engineering. Hacking is looking at some system and saying, how does that work? How can I change that? Engineering is starting with some premise and developing something. So when you look at all of this from a hacking perspective, I continue to see throughout my career the opportunities to fix problems just about the time they sink the boat. Because we don't like boats sinking and it's expensive, so we tend to deal with it by then.
I have noticed that security people are perhaps over-optimistic. And despite all the evidence,
I always think they're pessimists. Most security people are just dour.
You haven't been in sales, have you?
Every one of them seems to say, yes, we can. It's Bob the Builder moment until it happens, and then we can't.
You know what? There was a captain on a cruise ship who said we could get around that iceberg, not to worry. Every once in a while, the iceberg wins.
Well, the difference, though, is whether you're talking shipping or one boat.
Right.
Boats will sink. Hackers will, attackers will sometimes win. Things will get compromised, even when we do everything right. So that's one of the wonderful things about, being a professional in an area as opposed to going out on a boat once and having it sink on you, right? You can look at what you do next time, right? And that's that iterative process, and we get forced into these situations, where a lot of people get to say, I was telling you all along, and now's your time. So raise that flag. I actually think most security people are cynical and pessimistic, but we can discuss that more.
Yep. He's been hanging around the people who do interviews with him.
There you go. Amanda, last word on this here, because, we're having a debate. Is this, a Titanic kind of issue, or is this like, the skipper and Gilligan in a 3-hour cruise and we lost the boat and nobody knows they're gone?
It's funny you say that. I'm rewatching that whole show right now. But no, I don't think it's not a Titanic situation. They've just got to hustle and keep up this is such a fast evolving technology. So just being ever vigilant and doing just enough to keep, that value stream flowing efficiently and effectively, and dealing with situations as the customer says, as Alan mentioned.
So can we call this lean AI security?
I think once again we're at that point once again where the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. So there you go.
Eternal vigilance. I love when you bring a little history in there, Mike. All right, hey, let's take a break. We're going to move into block 3. We'll be back in a second here on Techstrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, welcome back. Continuing our cybersecurity conversation, we're going to talk about economics and the cost thereof, because, well, everybody's getting beat up about the cost of cybersecurity these days. We had a post on Security Boulevard talking about where the initial ransom demand has now exceeded $600,000. Barracuda Networks had a report out talking about the cost of cybersecurity is, surprise, surprise, keeps going up, and we don't know how to get our arms and how to control that. You've been having this conversation for years. What's your take?
So my take is something we were talking about in the previous block. Most every cybersecurity person I ever know is always, woe is me, how come I can't get more budget, right? Because there's never enough budget for the next shiny trinket to stop the ransomware, pay the ransomware, get the new doodad, train the people on the old doodad, or what have you. But here's an interesting thing I've learned about security. We didn't call it cyber. The whole darn time I've been doing this, for some reason, every little leprechaun in the cybersecurity world is always looking to steal someone else's pot of gold, right? It used to be, we're doing network security because, those network guys, they have like unlimited budget. They're buying all these boxes and switches and routers and Juniper devices, and we want to be more on network security so we could break into that network budget. When DevSecOps started coming, I remember security people telling me, the best thing about DevSecOps? We get to approve the security, but it comes out of the developers' budgets. Those guys have unlimited budgets. Here's the message. No one has unlimited budgets. Security has a damn good budget. And even in, I know there was an article last week or so, there were a bunch of stories about, I think it was Palo Alto said, well, spending cycles in security are slowing down. People want to know, should we keep spending the money when we don't seem to be thwarting the bad guys? Well, the nature of security is you don't know. It's hard to measure what didn't happen, right? I didn't get attacked today, or I wasn't the victim of a breach today, right? How do you put a dollar on that? But that's always been, that's the truth of cybersecurity budgets.
Chris, I think he's saying that cybersecurity people are the folks who come to dinner and never pick up the check. So what's up with that?
Honestly, anybody that knows me knows this. This is one of my biggest beefs. I pick on our friends and our peers all the time. Security people, have this hard time with economics. And look, if you're an engineer, you're an engineer, and sit down. And maybe you don't like people in arts and economics, but if you're a hacker, and you can look at a system, it may be electronic, it may be financial, it may be human. right? And if you can't look at that system and say, how does this work? And if I want, for example, to get security installed, then someone's got to pay someone something for it. Where does the money come from? What's their motivations? What are they doing? It's the same exact thing as figuring out how to get through a password protected yada yada gadget, right? So this should be in our space. I really, if you're out there in the world, you consider yourself a hacker, stop complaining about the economics, hack it, and figure out who's going to, be more comfortable in their job, who's going to get a raise because they made the right choice to spend the money on you or your friend or your pet project or whatever it is, and stop just complaining about it. Hack the bloody system.
All right. I want to run a clip here, though, where we did an interview with the CISO for HubSpot, and he was talking about how he justified something. In this case, it was name tag has a thing where you can take your driver's license and it runs your image and your face scan and correlates who you are. And he said he bought this thing to increase security, but he justified it because it was reducing calls to the help desk, which was on the IT operations side of the house. And so he had a reasonable, shall we say, finance team that would look at the total cost of that and do an analysis based on that. So, Mitch, how often are we kind of stuck in a situation where we're trying to cost justify something solely on the cybersecurity merits and not the merits to the whole organization?
Well, one thing you said in that lead up to that question was working with finance people who can put together kind of the whole picture. To Chris's point earlier, most security people are not great financial wizards. Maybe you don't know how to put a total cost of ownership or a return on investment beyond outside of the scope of what they work. So I think that's an extremely good idea. One of the dirty little secret about corporate budgets in big company is nobody has enough budget. It's not just security people. I've never been to a meeting where somebody said, we have way too much money in our budget. Would you guys take some of this and do something better with it than we can? Never happens. Yeah. What you do is you get on board with what the current corporate activity or project or mantra is. If it's modernization, well, great, let's then modernize security and then do this and try to go, opium other people's money, right? You can go get some budget from other things. So there are ways that you can add to what you're doing, but I'm also always suspicious of it. It's not just the next tool or the next technology that solves all your problems. It's never that, right? That's just one element of what you've got to do. Maybe your response is what's got to be beefed up. Maybe you're working with the people who are making decisions about what we invest in for technology. Maybe that's what needs help. So it's not a singular, let's go buy more stuff.
All right,
as much as I like stuff. Ask Alan.
Let's run that clip right now for a minute.
We see people are more sensitive to cost than ever when it comes to cybersecurity. And a lot of business execs are asking questions like, we've been investing in this for years, and are we any more secure? But how do I make the financial case?
Great question. The primary reason we implemented name tag was actually to offset the existing support costs that we had either in our support organization or in our IT organization. Your support organization is already fielding these requests, whether it's a password reset or a MFA reset. They're already fielding those, and this actually decreases the cost of it. So I actually think one of the great pieces here is you can actually really look at this as a cost savings mechanism, not a cost expansion.
All right, Chris, what's your sense? Do we need new technologies like the one that's just described, where we're kind of using facial recognition and multi-factor authentication, or is this just another example of what Alan started out talking about, where, hey, we got more toys and we need to buy them?
Yeah, and the short answer, I hate to be pat, is maybe. Right? Mm-hmm. It depends. Who are you? What's your risks? What are your goals and everything else? Right? But again, to the topic of this thread, those answers fall inside. Look, maybe you can be successful selling something like that and have a business because there's enough people to buy it. Or maybe it's time for that technology to be broadly adopted. And those are the things that interest me, because that's when the economics line up, when it makes sense. It's not just, there may be some business advantage to spending that or some security advantage or whatever. But, I can have almost 25-year-old slides on every device I've had, written by the great Stuart Phillips back when I met him. We were both at Cisco. And we took a end-of-life product, the PIX firewall, and turned it into $3 billion, plus in revenue by saying, if you don't get a firewall and get on the internet, your competitors will. and they'll lower their costs and increase their productivity and, put you out of business. So you need to buy our firewall because, in our case, we were Cisco and it's a good, decent firewall, and completely stopped at that point what the company had been doing, which is our security features are so much better than somebody else's security features. Now, we took security really seriously. I'm proud of that team, proud to be part of it. We did great work, but we understood why people bought firewalls, and it was firewall buying time at that point. So as professionals, beyond what company or vendor or whatnot we may be working with or technology we're concerned with at a time, over the long term, we need to be able to recognize those economic drivers. Now is the opportunity to get a lot of security in because it lowers your costs. It increases your customer satisfaction, or whatever it is that takes two companies and makes one that adopted your whatever it is be more profitable and outcompete and buy off the other one and change the one who wouldn't do the right thing in the first place because they can't afford to anymore.
So you alluded to this, and I'd like to get Mitch's opinion, but how much of this is a problem too because we don't have enough cybersecurity people that I don't have anybody to run these tools. So even if I knew what they did and how cool they are, I might not have the personnel to go actually implement these things. And maybe that's why everybody just keeps spending money on firewalls because that's what they know how to run. Mitch, what do you think?
Well, I heard the former CISO at no longer at Twitter, no longer called Twitter, say I don't buy any technology that's will require me to hire more people. If I already have more things to do, then I've got people to do them. So adding more tools or technology that send more alerts that more people have to respond to or whatever the issue is. So that's part of that holistic picture of it isn't just about the technology. How do you operationalize it? Is existing staff, what do you do to train them, and what do they need to in their hands to be able to be effective at using it? So you can't look at it as just a shiny object. As somebody's got to fly that shiny object and somebody's got to maintain it. So I think that's, the leaders look at that full picture. You're never going to have enough security people. There'll never be enough security people to hire. Just a sort of a truism, at least as far as our outlook can see. So what do you do when you can't hire enough security to people? You take the things that take consuming time and you figure out either can you not do that anymore, or can you automate it, or can you do something else? And then maybe that's what one of these new tools or technologies can do. So I think you have to be just pretty pragmatic about it, not and let the enthusiasm be there, but don't overwhelm some good logic. I'm using my Spock logic there. Alan's going to disagree with me.
No, I don't necessarily disagree. But I love a good history reference. Go ahead, Michael.
Is the cybersecurity industrial complex out of control?
Yeah, it is. Okay, does anyone know the movie? What was?
That's Eisenhower's speech.
I remember
when he
it. I know, but there was also a movie. What movie was it where he met with the guy who was, a mole within the military industrial complex that was driving the Cold War. But to your point, Mitch, I'm reminded, again, what Chris said earlier, and I lost my train of thought with your historical. Mitch, you were saying about.
It's not just the tool. It's like look at where you're spending resources.
Right? Where you're going with it.
Yeah.
It's very funny, but I think that's a real decision that CISOs are dealing with today, and that was the point, which is, where do I put my money? Do I automate the heck out of everything and do with less people, or do I bring on more people who can, I can maybe better quantify the bang for buck I get? But it comes back to what Chris was saying earlier about you got to hack these things. And I'm reminded of the movie, The Martian with Matt Damon. Remember? Science the shit out of it. It's the same thing with this stuff. You got to hack the crap out of it and figure out whether it is a little bit of people and a lot more technology, or a lot more people and not a lot more technology, or whatever. You gotta hack it and make it work if you're gonna make it till the rescue ship arrives.
All right, Amanda, you want to jump in here with parting words?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to understanding the level of risk you're willing to take, and adjusting your dollars to cover the risk you're most concerned about.
The managing risk thing. All right. Hey, Mike, this is a great Cyber Tuesday. Guys, I think we're about out of time, though. We've got another full couple hours of Techstrong TV here ahead of you for today, so check that out. We'll be back on with that right after this. But before we go, first of all, 2-hour gang member Chris Blask, who came and joined us today from his boats, from a location unknown. And thanks for joining us, Chris. It's great to have you on. And then,
thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Always.
Look forward to doing it more.
We'll have you back soon. And then Mitchell, Amanda, as always, great job, and thanks for joining us on the gang today.
Love
Thank
it.
you.
Part of the gang.
Mike, for those who don't know, Mike drives the editorial of these shows, and another great lineup of information today, Mike. Thanks.
It's fun.
Yep. All right, we will be back, I think, on Thursday with is our next fresh content here on Techstrong Gang. Stay tuned for the rest of Techstrong TV, everyone. Until next time, this is Alan Schimmel for the gang. We're out.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.